Good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me well. Elena will confirm me if this is working. I'm really happy to be here today to present you this online webinar on mutual recognition agreements and the upskilling transformation in the whole heat pump value chain. My name is Sonia Bianconi. I'm EU Projects Officer at the European Heat Pump Association. And today I will be moderating this webinar that will go on for a couple of hours. As you might already know, this webinar is an event that is held within two initiatives. The first one is the Heat Pump Forum that was held yesterday at the Atomium here in Brussels, and it was a great success. And the other one is the HP4All Project. That is one important example of the work that is being done towards the upskilling and reskilling of the people involved in the demand side and the supply side of heat pumps. Before leaving the floor to our first speaker, I would like to present you some rules, some housekeeping rules. So we are on Teams webinar, and you will be able to ask questions through the chat. Unfortunately, this platform does not allow to ask questions live, but you can write them in the chat, and I would like to ask you to please put the name of the speaker that you're addressing the question to before your question. And second, as you know, this webinar is recorded, and this recording will be available for you after this event. It will be uploaded on the HP4All social media accounts and on the HPA social media accounts, and it will be sent to you in a few days after this event. This is the agenda. I hope you can see it. Sorry. This is the agenda for today. So we will have a keynote speech by Thomas Novak and 4 presentations by Padraig O'Reilly, Carlos Garcia Delgado, Peter Juris, and Johan Petri. And in the end, after the presentation, there will be a small discussion moderated by me. So without further ado, I would like you to present our first speaker, Thomas Novak, Secretary General here at the European Heat Pump Association. Just a few words to introduce him. So Thomas has been closely following the energy transition, both in the electricity and heating sectors, and he represents EHPA, and his main responsibilities are representing the industry at the European institution and networking with the stakeholders in the field of heating and cooling. So without further ado, I would like to leave you the floor, Thomas.
Oh yeah, I can unmute myself. Good. I thought it told me I can't do that. Good morning.
Yes.
Good morning, everybody. So we're talking about skills today, and I'm just coming out of a meeting with the joint research centers that will also look into the topic. So everybody is interested. We are looking at an increase of heat pumps sales that is necessary, and we will need skills. Sonia, can I just present out of Teams, or do you have the presentation?
You should have a button that says take control. Do you have it? Can you see it?
Yes.
And you can just switch your presentation.
Okay, very good. Then let me go here.
If you cannot do it, I will just pass the slides for you. You can?
This is all. Here we go.
Perfect.
Shall be good. So what I want to do today is I want to talk about why we need more skilled people. So the justification, because I think that serves also as a nice background for the other speakers that are probably anyways much more equipped to talk about the skill question in detail. We look at it from quite a high level angle. So we say, if we want to install more heat pumps, if we want to install more integrated systems, if we want to install more big heat pumps, then obviously we need more skilled people. And these skilled people, we need them on all levels of the value chain. It really starts with consultants that make it easy for end users to decide in favor of heat pumps. And then it continues with installers and planners, electricians. And we should not forget that there's also a need for skills on the university education level. Engineers, planners, they need to know what heat pumps can do in order to properly integrate them into their own buildings, and on the factory floor. But I come to that. So if we look at heat pumps, we as European Heat Pump Association, we are a sector organization. We have 170 members, and we represent manufacturers, component manufacturers, consultants, research institutes, certification bodies, etc., some utilities that are occupying themselves with residential and commercial heat pumps, with industrial heat pumps, and some of them are even delivering components to white goods and cars, but this is not our main focus. So we really look at the built environment and at industrial processes. I'm happy to say that we can claim that heat pumps do work in all these application areas, and progress is leading to more and more solutions even for quite obscure application fields. The heat pump market, all in all, is growing very fast. You can see here that it has been growing since 2012 continuously. The last year saw outstanding and exceptional growth, 34% on top of already very successful 1.6 million units. So we ended up at 2.2 million, and we expect that this year, despite being very difficult and characterized by supply issues, there will be an additional growth of between 20 and 30%. First numbers for the first half of 2022 are quite optimistic, plus 28, but we don't know how big the impact will be of supply shortages and of course of the war. If I distinguish the sales into different product categories, then you see here that in the brown color we have brine to water heat pumps, very stable sales at the bottom of the graph of the bars. Then we have air to water heat pumps, which is at the moment a bit the pet child of the industry. It's growing slightly faster than the air to air heat pumps that are also used for heating. So what we're counting here is not air conditioning units, but it's really the air to air heat pumps that are used mainly for heating. And then in orange, you see the sanitary hot water heat pumps, and I will come to them in detail in a second, because they are important for installers that don't know heat pump technology so well, maybe not even trusting that technology. So they need an easy entry, and these are typically plug-in devices. It's a tank with a heat pump. You bring them into the building, you plug them in, and you connect the cold water and the warm water pipe, and you're done. It's very fast. It's a very fast inroad, and it can be put next to existing boiler technology. It's also a good solution when you use air-to-air heat pumps for heating and cooling, and you still need hot water. The two bars here and the red arrow in that slide also show us that the markets doubled in annual sales over the last 5 years, and we know from Repower EU that we need to have another doubling in the next 5 years. We have achieved a market, no, the market was, I have said already, so I will not talk about that more. We have achieved a total stock of 17 million units, and that includes all these categories that I have shown here. Sanitary hot water heat pumps show significant growth likewise. And as I said, this is an interesting entry-level solution for those installers and those end users also that are not necessarily convinced that they should move their whole building to a heat pump, so they can test the functionality and the reliability. And they can also use it as a balancing tool if they have, for example, photovoltaic on their roof and want to use more electricity themselves, but don't want to change the whole building. So that's that. If we look at the member states, who is leading? France, Italy, and it used to be Spain. But in the last year, very interesting support policy by the German government has catapulted Germany to position number 3, and they claim that they also want to go to position number 2 in no time. The German government has a target that would mandate about 500,000 to 600,000 units per year. So indeed, Germany will compete with France on the #1 position in the European market. But I think other countries will also do the same. And of course, all this, and that's what you have to keep in mind when listening to this presentation, all this has implications for the skills that we need in the marketplace. The sales increase are likewise outstanding. You can see here that nearly 150,000 units were added in Italy and France. Poland is going through the roof also in the first half of 2022. The markets are growing really fast. Germany, you see here in place #4, Norway, a very developed market, still growing. This shows us that, again, the markets will continue to grow, will have to continue to grow. If we would use this American language, maybe, then we could call heat pumps weapons of mass protection, because they protect us against the dependency on Russian gas and of oil gas, actually, and they also help us to fight climate change, if we want to use this martial language. Total numbers are not that promising. The total European boiler market is about 9 million units, and heat pumps have around 20% of that. But this is an important graph, because it also helps to put this question of whether heat pumps, whether there is a skills shortage, into perspective. We have people that can install 9 million heaters in Europe. Meaning we have installers that can install 9 million heaters in Europe. And if they are halfway skilled, then with a little additional effort, we can reskill them to become heat pump installers. The EHPA has been part of a project in the past called HP Cert, Heat Pump Certification course. It was a multi-language course that was rolled out across, if I recall correctly, in the end, 11 countries. Material is still available in these languages, but of course the visual appeal is a bit dusted. Fortunately, the thermodynamic hasn't changed, and from this project we can say that it takes about a week to reskill an existing boiler installer to make them a heat pump installer. And again, who is the market leader when it comes to market penetration? Then it's actually Norway, and Norway is also one of the countries that is really active in skilling people. Finland likewise. So we do see that strong market growth, at least in part, is also supported by the development of the respective skill sets. Just a few numbers. Heat pumps have a number of benefits that are understood and accepted these days. They provide significant thermal capacity, useful energy actually to end users. They use renewable energy, hence replacing fossil energy with renewables. No emissions at the point of operation, and very strong reduction in CO2 emission savings. You can look at the numbers in detail if that finds your liking. What is interesting is the button here on the lower left, because heat pumps also provide demand-side flexibility. They could at least provide demand-side flexibility if they would be connected to the grid and if they could be controlled based on supply and demand. And this is another point that is relevant for skills, because if you are a traditional boiler installer, then maybe your understanding of an IT-based environment, IoT, and the connection of the boiler to the network is limited. It's just not needed that much. You can do it, but it's more like a nice to have than a mandatory thing. But if we will have in the future these heat pumps that should serve the grid in providing stability and peak shaving, and they should also serve the end consumer in being connected to the photovoltaic array that they may have or that they find in their neighborhood, then you need to understand how to dimension and how to connect the product. Looking at skills, there's different numbers in the market. What we are doing is we are calculating the full-time equivalents, and we conclude that we need about 117,000 units for the different services, installation, manufacturing, component manufacturing, and maintenance. I know that Euroobserver is counting about double that number, and I didn't have the time yet to check why our numbers are so different, but they are. So by all means, we see that heat pumps are providing local jobs, and I brought this map with me today to show that the heat pump industry in manufacturing is actually quite distributed. And normally we talk about installer skills, but don't underestimate that there are thousands of people working in these factories, and you see that the factories are quite remotely located for some obscure reason, but that also means that they provide jobs and perspective in these remote areas. Needless to say, if we have a strong manufacturing base in Europe that also creates export potential, because the heat pump industry itself is a leading industry governed by European innovativeness and competence. What happens on the European level, and that is again important, because for the first time as a response to the war waged by Russia on Ukraine, the European Commission has put heat pumps in one of their banners of an initiative, Repower EU. We know what this is all about. It's an initiative that is supposed to help us to reduce the dependence on Russian gas. It has a number of heat pump targets, 10 million additional hydronic heat pumps by 2026 and 30 million additional hydronic heat pumps by 2030. We say that also air-to-air heat pumps and sanitary hot water heat pumps are helpful to reduce gas demand, and hence we think the total number will even be higher. What does that mean in numbers? I just made a scenario on this. In the lower bar, you see hydronic heating systems. So you see that the market has to grow to between 7 and 8 million only for this category alone. But as I said, also air-to-air heat pumps are providing heating and also cooling and hot water for sanitary hot water units. So all of these units will help to reduce gas demand. And that means it's actually a much higher number that we have to install. We think it's probably more 20 million additional heat pumps altogether by 2025-26, and about 60 million additional units by 2030. If you find that breathtaking, you're on board with me, because I am very optimistic, but I still think this is a tremendous challenge that will just justify more activity. And this is backed by member states who say, well, we don't want these gas boilers and these oil boilers no longer anymore. So Austria will ban gas in new buildings from 1st of January 2023. Flanders will do it 2025. France has banned oil boilers, will ban gas in new buildings, I think this year, and in multifamily buildings from 2024 onwards. Germany has set a share of 65% renewable energy in all boiler exchanges. And you can imagine what that means. And a traditional boiler installer must change their skill set on top of the needed additional to be skilled people. Netherlands has this hybrid heat pump mandate from 1st of January 2026, and Denmark wants to phase out the remaining 400,000 boilers, half of them to district heating, which is a different skill set again, and half of them to decentral heat pumps. So you see that both on small and large level, we have this skill set that we are needing. I think that we will see much higher growth. And much higher growth is necessary and possible. So we have on the other one hand the urgency to act, on the other side the agency, because we know the technology, we know how to install it. It's only a matter of ambition and will. As of today, what we can say is that growth is limited by component supply. We do not have enough microprocessors, and we do not have enough fans. The industry is really working at capacity, and despite that, we're looking at 25-30% additional growth that industry protagonists tell me is possible. The capacity on the installer level is really stretched. As I said, I think this is a short-term situation, because the installers did not change their skill set fast enough. And obviously, the demand from the end users has just materialized now. And if I'm an installer, I need to decide where to send my team, my people. It will take about a week or two. I have to balance, can I afford that they are not working for me for 1 week and do something else, train themselves? Do I invest in this, or do I fear that they go to somebody else? You know, these are all things that have to be considered on the ground in the business models of the installer businesses. But at the same time, we see new business models that are coming up that help installers to become more efficient, that improve the customer experience, that provides advice, etc. And there's going to be also new players that may not employ only installers, but may employ larger groups of what we call heat pump fitters, people that can bring a product into the construction site without being necessarily able to do the complete design and the assessment of the building and the needs of the building. So We think that we need to do more, and we have called this a heat pump accelerator. Let me say that we had an event yesterday about the topic. We looked at it from different angles, including from employment. It has 5 elements. We think that policymakers need to maintain the trust in the long-term reliability and the long-term focus on heat pumps. And that is also important for the installers, because if the installers get the feeling that their skill set is getting outdated, then they will change. I find installers normally, when I talk to them, very street smart. They don't need to be told. They understand very well what the market is doing, and they have a fine sensor for that. So important is to announce that this change is going to happen and to repeat this announcement so that everybody understands that. Of course, cooperation with the guilds and the local trade associations is also very important. Then I think an important additional point to this is point number 2, make clean heat economically most attractive. We have started a campaign that we call Heat Right, give everybody the right to choose a clean heating system and make this clean heating system the most affordable one, so that it's also economically more attractive to do that than to stick with fossil technology. This will then in turn create demand that the installers will react to, and the universities will react to, and the training centers will react to. Then maybe a bit more remote, avoid disruption through legislation, but also that has a relevance for installers, because if the installers have to retrain themselves all the time, they will not be super happy, because they will always say we can do much better work if we install heat pumps than if we sit in a training center. So if you don't create the need for a training center visit, then of course the impact in the installed numbers is bigger. Not saying that we don't need retraining, but it's something that needs to be taken into consideration. Then point number 4, here is the focus on skills for the energy transition. I will look into that in detail. And number 5, research and development. We want easier to install heat pumps, maybe self-configuring heat pumps, automatically connecting heat pumps, these type of things. There's still this dream that it was possible to use IoT and make things easier. And last, do not forget the electric grids. So while we think we need heat pump installers, there's also a strong request and requirement for electric engineers and electric installers, electricians that can make that a reality. What can we do? I explained already that I'm not necessarily convinced that we have a skills shortage just now, but we may have one in 2 to 3 years when the market has to grow. What can we do about it on the EU level? Little, because education is member states' prerogative, but nonetheless, the EU is trying to do something and to give something like an overview and a stock taking via the Pact for Skills. We have looked at it. We are not necessarily actively engaged at the moment because we have so many other things that we have to focus, but we are following it together with Europe on. Julie Beaufils, I don't know if she's in this meeting, but she is very active on that topic, and we have been working with her together with the Electrification Alliance. Oh, you're there. Well, Julie, she's really an education and skills hero, so good to have you. And if you don't know, anybody doesn't know her, contact her. She knows a lot more about this Pact for Skills than me. On the member state level, we should make the installer trade attractive. Some member states are really doing that now. You see advertising campaigns coming up. Don't you want to be an installer, heat pump installers? That's your future, things like that. Electricians, isn't it smart? Do you feel the spark? You know, there's a lot of good things that could attract people. Then we think that we could benefit from having this sort of capacity increase by having something like a heat pump fitter. You can call it like you want. I think the message is clear. You don't need all the skills of an installer that can dimension, design, select the technology. If you just, and I don't mean that in a demeaning way, but if you just need to bring the product into the building and fix it to the ground and put the pipes in and so on. Then ensure that heat pump knowledge is also part of higher level education, engineering, planning, architects in universities and technical universities, and push for technical skills on the factory worker level. I think we all will need this because we need new factories coming online very, very quickly. With that, I want to close. I think it really requires an all hands on deck approach. Hence, let's roll up our sleeves. Let's do this all together. It's a positive story. It's something that we can do. It's something that will create employment and perspective. If somebody has to choose a job today and he goes into electric engineering, electric installation, plumbing, heat pumps, they have a job for the rest of their lives. I'm sure about that. And with that, I wish you a great event, and I'm looking forward to the insights that will be presented. Thank you, Sonia, and good luck.
Thank you so much, Thomas, for this interesting overview of skills on heat pumps in Europe. I will now take control and share the master presentation. Okay, we don't have any question I see in the chat. So we will go on. Let me now introduce you to Padraig O'Reilly, who is our next speaker. Padraig is development manager at TUS, and he has been working in the Irish heat pump industry since 2002 across residential and larger heat pump projects. And he focuses on projects that concern heat pumps, energy efficiency, climate action, social enterprise, and rural development. So, Padraig, let me just give you the.
I can take control.
Can you take control?
Yeah. So.
Perfect. You should see some icons down there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just go directly to your first slide. Okay, or you can just switch until your slide comes.
Here we go.
Okay. Do you want me to do it for you?
Yeah, can you see that now?
I can, yes, perfect. Now, yes, it was uploading. Perfect.
Okay,
Please.
Is that on full screen now, Sonia?
It is perfect.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, thank you, and good morning, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning, and thanks, Thomas, for a very interesting presentation. My name is Padraig O'Reilly. I'm the development manager, as Sonia mentioned, at Technological University of the Shannon. So today I'll speak about our Heat Pump for All project, which was conceived, I suppose, back in around 2018, and it's currently in its final year. And in the context of today's talk about ambition requiring action, the Heat Pump for All project is really, it is about promoting, it's about upskilling within the value chain, and also then creating demand from end users for the appropriate skills, so that the end users realize the skills that they need to be looking for. And also then, as part of this project, as I go through the implementation and the approach that we've taken, we will then seek to roll this out across, or make it available, or make the concepts available to other EU countries. We have 3 pilot countries, which are Ireland, Austria, and Spain. So we would seek then to I suppose to spread the findings that we come up with. I suppose just touching on something that on some of Thomas's points, just about, there's a lot of discussion about shortages in the workforce, not to mention having the required skills. I mean, if we just take the case of the Irish market, it has really been transformational in the last 5 years. I mean, less than 5 years ago, we probably had less than 5,000 heat pumps being installed every year. We're now up to 20. And the growth has been, it has nearly doubled, like more than doubled. We've an increase of 12,000 units in the last year. So, this shows that it can be done, that this drastic, or really impressive increase in sales is achievable. And I suppose the concern is that we would maintain quality in those rapid increases of installations, and that's what the Heat Pump for All project is really focusing on, to ensure that the systems perform as they should perform, so that the efficiencies and the CO2 reductions and the comfort levels that are expected are actually achieved. So I'm going to run through an overview of the Heat Pump for All project, just its high-level objectives. The main work of our project is in the pilot activities in the 3 countries I mentioned, Austria, Ireland, and Spain. So I'll go through that. fundamental to the whole project is the development of skills. So to that end, in collaboration with the European Heat Pump Association, who are our partners in this work package, we develop a heat pump skills and competency framework. As we go through the realities of each marketplace, we come in contact, and we have done a lot of research on the policies that are in place in each area. And we have analysed those, and we will bring our findings at a regional level, let's say to local authorities, but also at national level to provide feedback to the policymakers as to how the policies are actually being encountered by people on the ground. And then, as I say, that our final stage is to encourage wider EU engagement with this project, so that our findings can be disseminated across a wider range. Project is about developing skills, so we're looking at the skills right across the value chain. It's really important that the project promoters understand very early what is needed to create, if it's an air to water or ground or brine to water system, that the heating system must be a low temperature system. Everybody needs to know that from the very start, because of all of the implications to the building envelope, to the heating system, and the design and installation process. The installers are obviously a key part of the value chain. But a thing that we have found through some other research projects that we worked on, that it's really important that the handover to the end user is of a really high quality, and that the follow-on service and the oversight of the system is very of a high quality for the first couple of seasons, or the first season after installation, because it's very easy for systems to be installed and for people to not really know what's happening. The impacts of the project, when we reach out into our when we work with the partners in the pilot regions, we will be delivering training and upskilling and information, and our predicted impact is shown in the table here in terms of primary energy savings, additional renewable production, reduction of CO2, people trained, and then we have two key kind of outputs in the project: a benchmarking tool for each pilot region, which will it will be an easy to access for the end user, just a way for them to check a project that they are planning, or their existing heat pump installation, to benchmark that system against industry norms. And then also a knowledge hub, which will gather together all of the information and training content that we produce in the project. Key objectives, I suppose, are to design the skills and competency framework, to increase the number of skilled workers, to really that's all focused, I suppose, on the value or the installation chain, the design, the supply chain. But we also have a very strong focus on the end users. So they might be individual house owners, they might be a local authority, project planners or engineers, developers of private schemes. So whoever is going to be in charge of maybe making the purchasing decision, but also having responsibility for the ongoing operation and maintenance of the system, that they are very clear what skills they need to expect from the people that they are paying. And then our other objective, our final objective there, is to replicate this approach at national and EU level. So our partners are, I suppose, we have our three pilot regions are represented by the Upper Austrian Energy Agency. We have CTA in Andalusia, and then TUS in Ireland. Then supporting those activities in terms of research and communication and dissemination, and we have Sustainable Innovations, RENA, IERC in UCC in Cork, and then of course the European Heat Pump Association. So we're very strong consortium, really far-reaching into the European heat pump market and across the different countries. So we feel we have a great representation here of the heat pump market in Europe. The pilot activities, I've mentioned where they are. The objectives, once we kicked off the pilot activities in earnest late last year, and I suppose earlier in the project, we defined the market sector that we were going to target. And I'll go through those individually in a minute. We then defined the skills that needed to be boosted in those target sectors, and they're different in each of the 3 pilot regions. This led then to a plan where we would, we have to go out and we depend on the, I suppose, the goodwill of our target stakeholders that they would engage with us to. And I suppose we have been really fortunate in the 3 pilot regions that we've had fantastic engagement across, a wide range of different types of stakeholder, which is really bringing back valuable information to us from the ground in each market. And then we once we have our plans developed, we implement them and monitor them, and we're providing support to local authorities. And as I say, the final kind of stage in the process is to where possible that we can require or we can direct feedback back to the policymakers and even maybe their representatives at regional level, but certainly at national level. The market research was carried out in the very early stages of the project. Awareness has been through social media, through leaflets, through targeted emails to the stakeholders that we've identified. Training then is again, it's particular to each region. We use as our starting point the accredited training provision that exists in each country, and that has been developing in parallel with this project. When this project started, compared to now, there is even more and more training available in each region. So in parallel with our efforts, training is being developed. So what we are doing then is, as we engage with the pilot actors, we identify any gaps that we might see, and we develop and deliver targeted training to those stakeholders. So moving on then to look at the specifics of the pilot regions. In Austria, in Upper Austria, the domestic heat pump market, I suppose, is fairly well established for a number of years, and there's very high quality of installations and well regarded as a technology, high percentage of market share. Biomass represents another very significant sector, and there are very clear ambitions to stop using oil and gas in heating systems. So for that reason, I suppose, where the consortium could see, and where the Upper Austrian Energy Agency could see scope for further moving on into the next kind of line of attack, is to see where we could look at large and mid-scale heat pumps within companies, within industry, maybe looking at using heat pumps for heat process heat recovery, or for larger commercial buildings, as well as keeping a close eye on the domestic market and looking at innovative heat pump solutions for the residential sector, perhaps looking at integrating with the electrical grid, or very new developments in technology for residential heat pumps. So awareness has been raised by the leaflets to targeted audience, to developing planning guides for large heat pump installations. So that really a lot of the work here has been focused on talking to project promoters who have been discussing potential projects, and is to provide them with more detailed training and about all aspects of making a large-scale heat pump project a reality. So they've also had a lot of engagement at trade shows, as noted here, and providing information on subsidies and various technical presentations on heating and cooling. So far, over 550 people have been trained. These are mostly professionals, as well as end users in the companies, just to bring up the awareness of what heat pumps can do at the larger scale. In Ireland, we are targeting both domestic and non-domestic, but our emphasis is on domestic because within our own climate action plan, we have a very, huge target of, 400,000 new heat pumps by 2030, and we're starting from a very low base. So, just touching back on the large increase in sales, that if we started from 5,000 and we're now up at 20, within 5 years, and we had a doubling, this is driven in two ways in the residential sector, and those figures are about the residential sector. The new building regulations are such that it is effectively impossible to install an oil or a gas boiler because the energy rating package that is used, it effectively makes it impossible. So they haven't been outrightly banned, but it's very difficult to justify using them. So for that reason, there's a huge increase in housing estates around the country, private housing estates that are having heat pumps installed. So that's one of the main reasons. There isn't any, there's not a kind of a national requirement for heat pump installers to be certified for these installations when they are new build. It's been driven by the building regulations. So the quality is being, the onus is on, I suppose, the warranty from the heat pump suppliers to make sure that they are satisfied they can stand over the warranty. There's a huge amount of work being done in retrofit. We have a large proportion of our buildings need to be retrofitted to bring them up to standard. And in this case, they are supported by generous grants of €6,500 for a domestic heat pump. And they are quite well regulated in the sense that the installers must have training. They must have 2 levels of training. There's a national training requirement that they have to have, as well as installer training, manufacturer specific training. So that is very well organized and regulated, and installations are inspected at random to ensure quality. So what we chose to do in our target market then was to focus on local authorities who have, in the midst of all this, we also have a housing crisis in Ireland. So local authorities are really being tasked with ramping up their own building and of affordable and social housing. And in all of these houses, heat pumps have to be installed. So we've already been out to 10 local authorities to speak to engineers, planners, administrative staff who will all be tasked with looking after these projects. We've run promotional campaigns, which we call Climate Action Days. We've case studies. We've been producing 10 case studies to provide best case or best practice examples. And we're also going to be running workshops with the end users in housing estates. So we call these estate events, where we gather a group of people around an actual heat pump and discuss the realities of the heat pump in their house, because the technology is new to all these end users. They've grown up with fossil fuel boilers, which are fast acting, and they run for short periods of time at high temperature. So this is a big shift for them to get to know how to use the system properly. Our training activities have focused on capacity training for heat pump installers and for the SMEs that employ them. Again, we have a series of webinars which we've been running since early in the summer, and we'll continue through to the end of this year, and various other workshops and training programs for designers, specifiers, and then when we move into the policy side of things, we've had meetings with the Construction Industry Federation, Engineers Ireland, the Irish Heat Pump Association, people from Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland who administer the government grants. We've also been on a committee for developing a new national heat pump standard for domestic heat pumps. So there's an awful lot going on, and it's really timely for us to be working on this in these pilot activities in Ireland. Moving on then to our Spanish partners, the focus here is on public sector heat pumps, buildings organised, and the responsibility of public sector authorities. Whereas in the domestic scenario in Ireland, it's all hydronic systems, so air to water predominantly, a small percentage of brine ground source to water. In Spain, it's we're looking at the majority of systems that are being looked at are air-to-air systems because of the need for summertime cooling, but there is an increasing amount in certain parts of the country where hydronic systems are being used and air-to-water heat pumps are being installed. So it's that sector is developing. The air-to-air is much more predominant, and but the activities to date have focused on webinars with policymakers and private sector stakeholders, information events, looking at gathering market information from the market, to see what initiatives are at play. I mean, replacing old inefficient systems and with high, maybe global warming potential refrigerants with more modern systems that are much more efficient and have lower GWP is one of the main focuses, I think, here. There's also information for educational and training centres being provided and discussions with policymakers to generally to raise awareness about where improvements can be made within the marketplace, and I suppose drawing on experiences from other countries as well to encourage greater action. The two awareness tools that are key in the HP4All project are a knowledge hub, which will be available online. So all of the training material that we generate in each pilot region will be made available here. And then for each of the pilot regions, a kind of a region-specific benchmarking tool has been developed, which is available online to homeowners. They're all domestic focused, giving people. I suppose the big thing here is to try and get them homeowners to be to take ownership of the electrical consumption in kilowatt hours that they have. It's part of their electrical bill, and it can be difficult to separate heat pump consumption from the general electric consumption, particularly if they're new to the technology. So that's what the tools are focused on to make that a bit more accessible for homeowners. Sorry, I skipped on there. So as I said, we have a lot of work done on assessing the heat pump skills that are required. We've had, we've carried out some work looking at national and European training providers. We've surveyed a very large number of them around different countries. We've conducted analysis on training frameworks, and we've had focus groups and expert meetings, and we've produced a heat pump public and market acceptance report. So all of this is feeding into the framework for training. It will take into account the diversity of the stakeholders that are there, looking at the different upskilling characteristics that are required, any barriers that are there, and then say future opportunities that are emerging, and I suppose then the Repower EU comes along. So that's really putting more emphasis on this and requiring greater action. We have conducted policy reviews. We've looked at the incentives and the practices for public and private procurement in particular, looking at maybe emphasis on green public procurement. 15 European policies have been analysed, and 17 incentives. So we will be finalising reports on that, and we're, I suppose, at each regional level, we're looking at the policies that are in place and maybe making suggestions back to the national agencies to provide them with feedback, which I think they find very valuable. And finally, then our replication into we have 3 defined observer countries, so that they are Croatia, Portugal, and Romania. We've engaged with people who are active in the heat pump sector in these countries, and are in the process of developing a mutual recognition agreement, which will, I suppose, summarise and outline the key findings from the HP4All approach and make that available to them. And also we seek to maybe we can learn from these regions as well, as so the information can flow in 2 directions. And so this work is ongoing at the moment. So thanks for your attention. that's the end of my presentation. Happy to take any questions later. And back to Sonia.
Thank you so much, Patrick. So we have our next speaker now. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Carlos Garcia Delgado, who is head of Building and Construction Sector at Technological Corporation of Andalusia. He specialized in business development and technology commercialization and internationalization in energy, environment, and construction domains. And he's got more than 35 years of experience in the research and development as the research and development manager, both in the public and private sectors and both at national and international level. Please, Carlos, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Sonia. I will try to get control. Okay, I will check whether it works. Yeah, it's correct. So let's go. Okay. Thank you to the Heat Pump Association, to the European Heat Pump Association for counting on me for this intervention. I will try to give you a short overview of the challenges and complexities of the Spanish heat pump market and also the related Spanish heat pump labor market and how these shortages that have been so far referred to are taking place also in Spain, and the crucial role that mutual recognition agreement are expected to play. I will split my intervention into three parts. The first part I think is important because I will be giving you a broad picture of how the Spanish heat pump market looks like, its complexities and its challenges. The second part will be devoted to analyzing how the Spanish labor market is reacting to this challenge. And the third part will be focused on drawing some conclusions and some recommendations for the future. With regard to the Spanish market, I think it is important to bear in mind, and I guess that this will not be the only case throughout Europe, that actually we have three different markets. Northern Spain, which clearly resembles Central and Northern Europe, wherein heating demand is the predominant one throughout the year. The second big part in terms of size, but not that much in terms of population, is central Spain, which faces both strong requirements for heating in winter time and for cooling in summertime. And last but not least, southeastern Spain, which is clearly influenced by the Mediterranean climate, and wherein cooling demand preempts throughout the year. It is also important to note that for the time being, household applications largely preempt. The degree of penetration of heat pumps in the industry segment is still lagging behind, and this is also clearly an opportunity for improvement. This is a underexploited opportunity both for industry and for installers. In terms of market penetration of heat pumps, of course, and I'm just showing a graph produced by our colleagues from the European Heat Pump Association, the degree of penetration of heat pump in comparison to other countries, especially France, is clearly low and is mainly focused on air-to-air system, although hydronic heat pumps are making inroads, especially in the last 2-3 years. Okay, but in this sense, and and I think this is also a matter for reflection. It is clearly influenced by the degree of electrification of the energy system, which is in Spain is currently lagging behind in comparison to other EU countries. It is also important to have an overview of how the Spanish heat pump stock has been growing in the last years. This is not an exponential curve, but it is nonetheless a steady growth. Despite the crisis we have been facing in the last years of the past decade due to the COVID outbreak and other related issues, which clearly influenced the climatization market as a whole. But in this sense, at least in Spain, this slight decrease was less important in the specific segment of heat pumps. So it is important to note, as Thomas did earlier, that this, in terms of size, the Spanish heat pump market is the fourth one throughout the European Union. This is a big market, but the growth rate does not match the expected values that one would assume if we compare with the market size. This is largely due to some barriers and bottlenecks that I will be referring to later on, and most of them clearly related to skills and qualification shortages. Also, this is also a graph which has been shared by Thomas. This is another illustration of this relatively lower growth rate in comparison to other EU countries, although theoretically the Spanish heat pump market could have a clear room for improvement and penetration. Having in mind all these aspects I have been referring to, how is currently the Spanish labor market response, both from the public sector and from the public one? The qualification and competence framework in Spain is, let's say, divided into two big groups. One more general, which refers to installation and maintenance general skills, including heating, cooling, and climatization as a whole, but without a clear differentiation for heat pump installing. And in this case, we have 4 level 2 qualifications, mostly related to assembly and maintenance, including piping. And 7th, level 3 qualification related to design, supervision, and control. More specifically, in the domain of water and energy, we have just 1 level 1 qualification related to renewables assembly and maintenance support, including specifically aerothermal, geothermal systems, but we haven't yet any official level 2 qualification, nor level 3 qualification related to this very specific system, which is clearly a drawback in our case. What is trying to do both the public sector and the private one with regard to this situation? I will be also referring to it later on. The time span needed for the approval of these qualification frameworks is lengthy, and in this sense, it is a clear problem to be solved. In the meantime, both industry and the public sector are trying to put in place non-formal qualification schemes, which will try to make up for this gap. In the meantime, up to the official training and qualification schemes are finally developed and approved. In this sense, it is worth mentioning an EU-funded project coordinated by the Spanish Construction Labor Foundation, which is called Construye 2020 Plus, okay, whose main aim was specifically to draw up a non-formal qualification and competence framework based on mutual recognition agreements from the different participants and any other entities adhered to the system. It includes a number of definitions and tuition contents to be developed by the consortium. Also, a roadmap to develop this scheme, and a number of official tests to approve and to guarantee the quality of this certification system. Going a little bit more in depth with regard to this approach, which is called the green tag approach. As I have been mentioning beforehand, this is a non-formal vocational education and training scheme intended to make up for the existing gaps in formal ones, and it tries to pave the way for future formal scheme, more specifically devoted to emerging technologies or more efficient technologies, as the case of heat pumps. It is also aimed at mutual recognition as a very efficient way to rapidly deploy this training offer in response to market and public demands. It is being channeled through the signature of a number of memorandum of understanding and the accession to third parties as well. It has been drawn up according to the standards of ISO, EQF, ECVET, etc. It is intended, as I have been mentioning beforehand, to cover the qualification levels 3, 4, which comprise from basic up to specialized level. The green tag will be awarded by the memorandum of understanding signatory parties, and according both to training schemes, official training schemes approved, and also a qualified experience recognition system. In the very specific case of heat pumps, there are precise reference to energy efficiency fundamentals for operators, also for middle management, and in the case of installer, heating system installation, geothermal system installation, and energy efficiency measures in building. The skills and competencies outreach expected include, in the case of installation, heat pump types, components and operation protocols comprehension and selection, overall heating system configuration, installation and maintenance, and heat pumps performance improvement measure identification and implementation. In the very specific case of geothermal system installation, which is a clear opportunity also in Spain so far under exploited, there are specific targets on heat pump types, component, and operation protocols comprehension and selection, and also heat pump systems configuration, installation, and maintenance skill. My last part will be dealing with these conclusions we have got to once we have compare this baseline scenario with the response currently being made by the Spanish public and private sector. In the case of Spain, there is still little awareness and familiarization and lack of training culture in the lower end of the value chain. I'm just referring to designers, installers, and end users, both firms and the workers. There is also confidence in the technology, but not clear perception of the upskilling needs. It is strongly influenced by the location, as I've been mentioning beforehand, because in northern Spain, for instance, it is clear that heat pumps can be and must be used for heating and also for domestic hot water supply. Whilst in southern Spain, heat pumps are currently perceived both by the end users and also by the industry as mainly cooling systems, and not that much emphasis is currently being put in heating opportunities, neither on sanitary hot water supply, which in this southern part of Spain clearly competes with solar thermal systems. So in this sense, there is a clear need of clarification of the optimal usage of this system and what conditions would be the most appropriate to install these systems in one case or in another. So, under which situation would be more efficient using a solar thermal system instead of a heat pump system, and conversely. Normally, and particularly designers and installers, firms are somehow reluctant to adopt in-house workday training for employees. This has been also mentioned by Thomas, and in this sense, there is a clear need of using online training tools to allow for this compatibility with regard to the normal workday practices. There is also a clear gap in formal, lifelong, and dual vocational education and training modules, because I have been mentioning beforehand, they are mostly non-heat pump specific. Another problem I have been referring to is that the process of training system registration, homologation, and certification is lengthy, and it is a clear bottleneck in this respect. It is also worth mentioning that, as in the case of Construye 2020 Plus, some more agile systems have been very recently deployed. They are based on mutual recognition, which is a clear and very efficient tool to make up for this gap and these bottlenecks, and gain time in view of the ambitious target that had been set by the Repower EU initiative. But again, there is a lack of adequate training providers. This has been clearly transmitted to us within the context of the HP4All project by the Spanish Construction Labor Foundation and some other public bodies. They are facing huge problems finding out appropriate training providers. And in this sense, again, the mutual recognition system is a key tool to make up for this bottleneck. There is also a lack of coordination, which has been widely recognized both from manufacturers and installers in education and training throughout the whole value chain and with the administration. In the last workshops and the meetings we have been holding with representatives of the whole value chain, this aspect has been emerging all the time. The need not to work in silos, but in a more coordinated way and having account on the whole value chain. There is also a clear bottleneck, which somehow it might be surprising, but in the case of Spain, this is a reality, and it is that the education and training funding is also a bottleneck. Industry is partly tackling this issue, but it is not enough. It is being so transmitted by industry. They need more support from the public side and also from the installer side. So in this sense, trying to make up for a more coordinated financing strategy for education and training, and more specifically related for heat pump reskilling, skilling is a clear message. Finally, there is also a strong message transmitted both from installers and also from manufacturers, in the sense that skills should be oriented toward building specificities and the interpretation of building limitations in order to get to an optimal cost-benefit choice and fit for purpose solutions instead of one-size-fits-all scheme. And again, as pointed out by the former speakers, training for designers and installers is crucial. But in this case, particularly for designers, because it clearly conditions the downstream adjustments to be made to heating systems in the built environment. So just to finalize, it is clear that in Spain we need to build further on the key role of the administration, both from the financial, legal role, and also as early adopter in what respect public procurement, and why not public procurement of innovation, and also as a prescriber, and to foster the education and training related dialogue in order to create synergies amongst vocational education and training organization, educators and trainees, and the solution providers, particularly manufacturers, installers, and designers. That's all from my side. Sonia, thank you very much for allowing me to give this presentation, and I just leave the floor. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Carlos. It is indeed important to know what the problems and challenges are for the upskilling in the heat pump sector to actually address them in the most successful way. So I will now give the floor to Peter Juris. He is project manager at Delgado Environmental Technologies, and he has more than 10 years of experience implementing EU-funded projects like the Train for Sustain project that he's going to speak about in a few seconds. He is also managing and coordinating the company's portfolio linked to Earth observation and physical building assessment. So please, Peter, the floor is yours. You should be able to take control. Okay.
Yes, Thank you, Sonia. I
Thanks.
hope you can hear me and see me well. Thank you very much for inviting me and especially the project to this webinar. I would present briefly what we have done in Train for Sustain H2020 project with regards to measuring competencies and our intent to raise demand and upskilling of building professionals. Our project was not aimed specifically for heat pumps. We took a more holistic approach also for creating a system or framework that I will introduce very shortly. And I will touch upon the type points in the theme of this webinar with the heat pump sector. So, Train for Sustain project is basically phasing out. So we have major results here to be presented. We have 7 partners from 5 different countries. And our goal is multiple in raising awareness and create demand for upskilling the building professionals, but also related more specifically for sustainable energy. The cornerstone of the project is that due to the work migration and due to the need for more professionals entering also for the heat pump installation sector or from the designer perspective, building design perspective, we thought that it's also a challenge that if building professionals switching between work or company or even countries or region, they should not always reskill or prove what they can do for the concrete project, but they could carry basically a certificate how they can prove their knowledge and skills in the specific area that they work with. Also, another important component for our project is that it should, of course, create trust among the market actors that are from different sectors, public, private, so the demand side, but also on the professional side, how they can choose, for instance, trainings in different regions or different countries that is adding to their resume, basically, throughout the years. So we have sort of created the benchmarking measurement system for that, that also allows reporting what their competencies are. And basically, the diagram shows what were our major target groups in this project. Of course, from the public-private actors, we also thought that it's really important that we give tools, services for them to understand better what the sector, what the industry provides for them. Therefore, we have taken on board the regional actor, Generalitat Catalunya, who basically tested in a pilot study what we have developed with the scoring system, with the framework of competence quality measurements but also a platform that serves the specific needs of this real life application. And of course, we work with the scheme operators who are providing trainings, so that's another important leg for our project. And basically, to sum up what we did very briefly, is that we have created a flexible framework that we call the Train for Sustained Competence Quality Standard, which is sort of becoming a pre-standard. I will tell you later about this. How we were able to do this is that we have mapped and analyzed a lot of qualification schemes. I have to again say that we have concentrated on trainings and qualification schemes from many sectors, many professionals, not only the heat pump sector. Therefore, our approach is sort of a higher level system, but which is very important that in the levels down in the system, any technology can be integrated into this measurement system and reporting system. And it's really important that usually the case for the project is that the areas of expertise and learning outcomes are the building blocks of our system. Of course, that we had an intensive look throughout the project. Jumping into the major achievements is that the competence quality standard eventually evolved throughout the project into a SAN workshop agreement, which is currently being delivered. It's going to be an official pre-standard published by the SAN. It's important for the sector and for professionals and for the industry, because this will create as this can become a final standard eventually if it goes through all the public consultations and all the processes that it needs to take. It can create basically credibility towards our approach. What is important is that with this scoring framework, we are able to create a skill passport, what we call a skill passport, which is important. Now I refer back to my previous point, is how it's possible to bring or carry the knowledge and skills that one take in one region, in one part of Europe into another one, or even outside of Europe. It's possible to use as international communities are interested in our work. We really believe that this is something a way forward. Moving on, the SAN workshop agreement is really important for us. It basically also gives the credibility, as we have analyzed the respective standards and guidelines from the field. A couple of standards have been analyzed, but also EU initiative were pretty strongly taken into account, such as the levels initiatives with the holistic approach, how the building should be handled holistically. Going into some details, how the Train for Sustain scoring system looks like. Basically, It has thematic fields and it has hierarchical levels. It has 4 levels. Each one of them getting more insight into the technology and the specific sectors that it describes. So there are macro areas of expertise, and learning outcomes at the end, which we know that is still not the end, because specific sectors such as the heat pump sector can provide so many trainings that we haven't analyzed, but very specific learning outcomes also exist within this industry. But as I said, it can be all integrated into this general framework that the project has created. So the thematic fields are 4. It's environment, society, economy, and processes. Within the thematic fields, there are macro areas of expertise, such as energy, water, materials, and so on and so forth. And going into more into details, areas of expertise are more break down the measure, the scoring, applicability of the train for sustain competence quality standard system. And underneath the area of expertise, basically learning outcomes exist, which is really important for many of the projects in the same field. These are the fundamental building blocks of building professionals' knowledge and skills, because these are describing really what the professional capable of doing, and describing her profile professionally. So the learning outcomes, obviously, what is important is that there were, for the SAND workshop agreement and the final documents that are soon to be released, hundreds of pages of learning outcomes described in the documents, which are all standardized. The descriptions, basically, that was the very big chunk of the part in this phase of the project. It's a unified language how we describe the learning outcomes, knowledge and skills. Therefore, we pretty hope that eventually the system therefore can be transferred into many regions within Europe and outside of Europe. What is important is that how we measure the competencies on a scale. I won't go into very much detail into this. Probably you can imagine, as we have also taken the EQF system as a base for our work, and basically that's the language how we can describe the building professional knowledge and skills, eventually the competencies that he can carry. The pre-standard structure is a standard, has a standard format, is defined by the SAN. Basically, all the definitions are provided. The methodology is described in details, and the applicability and for instance the reporting and the validation processes are also discussed in the document that will be released officially by UNI, our partner in this SAND workshop agreement, soon, probably in the beginning of October. So how we can apply it to the sector and for real life application, all what we have done is that the competence quality standard eventually was transformed into a digital tool. So basically there is an application that I will present also very shortly that gives a lot of functionalities, services for the multiple target groups that are mentioned in the beginning of my presentation. And we have, together with our Catalonian partners, we have tested the system in the field of green public procurement. So the digitalization of the workshop agreement, what we call a European Skills Registry. It's a platform available online and can be used. It's on public domain. It can be used by anyone basically, but also it has a registration side that allows users to access more functionalities. I won't introduce it in very details. Basically, the platform copies all the measurement system, the scoring system of what the competence quality standard includes, what I have just introduced, but it's implemented into a digital environment. And basically all the scoring and the skill passport is generated automatically once the user finished his/her profile completed on the platform. So basically what are the major features is the level of competence can be defined through the system. Also what is able to support is setting up construction projects, and therefore, so this is on the demand side. This service is for demand side action. So a public-private entity can set up a project, and based on the system, it can establish what are the needs, what are the professional needs of the project in terms of skills and competencies. Also the platform manages qualifications and courses. So basically scheme operators are able to interfere with the platform. They can update the learning outcomes. They can update the description of what information is included in the database. It's a specific service directed towards qualification scheme owners. And of course, since also it's a very complex platform, we provide help, support to our current and future users. Currently through a help desk, but we are tempted to exploit it commercially and in different regions in Europe. So therefore we can provide more specific consultation for interested stakeholders. Finally, what we have also delivered is a pilot study in Catalonia, which basically we have tested the scoring system, also the platform functionalities. How can you set up for your construction project or refurbishment project a project team, the requirements for a project team. Basically, we worked with an official project that is directed by our Catalonian partners. It's a concrete project, but since it was a pilot public procurement, the procurement wasn't based on our methodology, but in parallel with the selection process, application selection process, we have tested in parallel what could be the benefits, the added value of using the Train for Sustain system and the skill passport into this pilot study. So the construction project had, of course, main technical features that we could address. We specifically focused on the architectural team that's supposed to be selected by the contractor. And we have basically applied, it's a reminder that based on the thematic fields, the areas of expertise, and the learning outcomes, we have set up the project in the system with these areas that relates to different building professionals. Here you can here you can see the exact matching with the platform and the contract that was designed by the contractor in Catalonia. Here you can see the scoring system, how it was taken into account in the different topics, and eventually receiving the application was also piloted, how you can sort of refine the scoring of the applicants and finally choose the winner consortium using the skill passports of the individuals and of the consortium that applied for the job. Basically, this was a pilot case. We have learned a lot. We will publish a deliverable on what were the benefits, what were the lessons learned of using our services and the framework. Our reports are mainly public, so all the detailed descriptions are in the reports. Thank you for this opportunity for presenting the project, and I will give back the floor to you. Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you so much, Peter. So before going to the Q&A session, I would like to introduce you Johan Petri, who is Associate Professor at Cardiff University. He is specialized in artificial intelligence and edge computing with applications to the building and natural environment. And in this field of study, he leads several strategic European and UK research projects. So please, Johan, the floor is yours. I see that you've taken control. Please. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Sonia, for inviting me. A very quick check whether my microphone is functioning correctly and you can see my slides.
It is.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Johan Petri. I'm an associate professor at Cardiff University, and today we'll share some insights on our work on the Instruct project that looks at energy efficiency training and education. Okay, with a new perspective that we put forward essentially is to look at how we can digitalize energy education and how digital technologies, for instance, can incentivize the delivery of such education. In particular, I'll describe some tools that we've developed as part of longer initiatives related to education and training. One of which is looking into energyeducation.com platform that we've created as a knowledge hub and a knowledge repository. This has been really reviewed and provides access to a number of studies and documents, including standards and guidelines related to energy efficiency. Another aspect that you can identify in this one-stop online platform is social media sources, and we aggregate information on social media with two main objectives. One is to essentially identify trends and changes in the domain of studies. Often people tend to use social media to express their activities or future actions, and we have managed to capture this in some studies that we've developed. The second objective of using social media is to actually put together a number of experts and professionals so that they can collaborate and together contribute to this common objective of promoting energy education. Of course, we've also consolidated a number of use cases and best practice scenarios, including projects that have been successfully in this field of energy efficiency, including methods and strategies to develop energy efficiency interventions. They are all available on the platform, and we've extracted some useful insights around how best practices have been applied across different countries at the European level. And of course, the fourth pillar that we've leveraged on is to look at consultations. And from this, we essentially undertaken interviews, questionnaires, and workshops with a wide range of European experts in the field of energy efficiency in construction. You may be familiar with ECTP, European Commission Technology Platform, that has joined to our initiative, and we've been very privileged to work with well-positioned experts in the field of energy efficiency. So these are the four main pillars that we've combined in the attempt to extract requirements and gaps in the existing energy efficiency training, and of course to determine some objectives that the entire community would like to put forward towards this sustainability and energy efficiency education. So let me show you essentially what are the research questions that we've tried to answer after this, of course, elaborated inventory of what exists out there currently in terms of energy efficiency education, and then what are the existing, of course, tools and methods at the EU level. So we want to address the lack of demand for skilled workforce in energy efficiency, answering a number of questions, one of which is what is the state of awareness, access of information, and dissemination of knowledge of energy efficiency in the construction sector. The second question that we would like to answer is what is the level of demand for skilled workforce in energy efficiency? So what is the state of training programs of energy efficiency currently available in the industry in terms of scope, quality, content, and cost? So we've made an inventory of what exists currently, and of course, we've done some projections about how this can be improved or scaled. And the last question that we have is what is the state of the sector in terms of shared values and coordination of stakeholders across the supply chain for energy efficiency? Okay, so leveraging on this, essentially, I should add that a training program or a training initiatives usually leverages on three main dimensions. One of which is theoretical knowledge, right? So there's a number of elements that an individual would need to know, And that can be at a theoretical level. The second dimension that is often used in an educational program is practical knowledge, right? So that would be a set of exact competencies and skills, and that will leverage on the theoretical knowledge. Okay, and the third dimension that you may find after theoretical and practical, that would be shared values. What are the values that are determined based on this process of education, and what are the values that spread across a community of practice? So I think the third dimension, which is values, is the most important one, and that it has been proved by research that has the highest impact in a societal domain. So based on this conclusion, we've employed the science-informed methodology, of course, that has the objective to essentially tell us what are the best practices, what are the use cases, what people want to do, what are the trends and directions that the industry is proposing, and then from this we would add our own vision, our own strategies. So we've done a thorough literature review. We've identified different documents and best practice use cases. We've conducted questionnaires and interviews, and of course, we've organized this in a Europe-wide workshop where professionals and experts from all the domains have joined, just to validate our approach and then suggest step forwards. I would recommend accessing the platform that we used as a main source of information. This is not the result of our project, but this reflects a lot of the contributions that we've developed in this field of energy efficiency training. So this platform is a semantic machine learning platform that provides different categories of information. So you may find building information modeling information, training and education. You may find sustainable design ideas, sustainable tools and sourcing, and of course a professional networking widget where you can also find an aggregation of information and associated professionals. So based on this one-stop shop framework, we supported our research-driven approach, which means in conducting a questionnaire analysis. So we managed to aggregate around 32 questionnaires. We've conducted around 27 interviews, also collecting on 70 best practice use cases, and analyzed around 50 million data sets from social media, all related to energy efficiency training and education in the construction sector. So some of the results that we've obtained from here, unsure if this is visible, but I can very quickly tell you what the analysis determined. One of which is there is not enough and proper information of awareness around energy efficiency and the impact that energy efficiency education can make in a society. Then when applying some strategies related to energy efficiency education, it seems there are some procedural barriers, and there's also financial standing issues in relation to supporting such an initiative. I think the most important item that has been identified from the analysis is that imposing energy efficiency education in different systems and countries is a challenge, and usually experts are struggling to evidence that there's a demand for energy efficiency education, and of course there's also a challenge to demonstrate that providing a higher quality education and additional interventions the industry that they operate, but also in the society, can make a significant change in terms of how the real life of the end users and occupants, and of course other roles can be affected. Okay, so probably I'll just skim through one additional question that we felt is important. So we've asked this: what areas, in your opinion, are affected positively by training and energy and efficiency? And the majority of experts and users that have participated in our analysis have reported that the environment research and environment-based industries would have the most significant gain in terms of how they can change their current modus of operandi into more sustainable practices. Of course, you can see that also the construction sector is a domain that can also gain a lot of benefits in terms of changing their current practices and adopt more sustainable interventions. Of course, economy, society, and other elements have been reported as part of the analysis. What type of training materials have you used in a training program for energy efficiency in the construction sector? The majority of users have responded that there's education has been delivered in the form of handouts and best practices guides. And then also classes, you can see online videos and training and literature for energy efficiency. So we currently identify that there's not a clear structure in the way how energy efficient education is being delivered. Other barriers that you can see being identified is people not knowing about have this awareness of environmental issues. There's also legislation and regulations issues, motivation and incentives. So essentially, there's a deadlock in the society, and of course, in a community of educational endpoints, where nobody wants to know more about energy. And perhaps that's an interesting reflection on how us as a society and as an educational system, we convey a message to the end users. Okay, so
sorry, Johan, I'm really sorry to interrupt you. Can I ask you to do it in 5 minutes, to finish up your presentation in 5 minutes, so we have some time for question as well?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you so much.
That should be 5 minutes, no problem. So based on this initial set of results, we've analyzed and proposed some digital technologies based interventions, and one of which is leveraging on blockchain and semantic web. So very quickly, our solution is around energy education platform, where you can find a blockchain registered system where users can subscribe and record a number of trainings. We also have a very large portfolio of training that we developed as part of the project. But essentially, our platform supports an interaction between a user, training partners, a blockchain interface, and every element in a training is being recorded and validated by a blockchain system. And I will perhaps show you how the platform looks and how the transactions are displayed. So you can see the number of transactions and the number of training contracts, smart contracts that have been registered by different institutions. A breakdown of price ranges, and of course, number of registered users. So these are all available on the energyeducation.com platform. You can see a more practical interface of a blockchain-based passport that we developed. So this is available on a mobile phone. Of course, is synchronized between the web platform and the mobile phone, and you can see here a transaction log when a query is applied to the blockchain. So a query can be registering a training or validating a training. If a user is enrolled on a training in France, and then the user would go in Finland, that there would be the ability to have that training validated in a blockchain. And we've listed a log on how that particular validation transaction on blockchain looks like, with a transaction hash, the block, the timestamp, and of course transaction action. And there's also a barcode in here that can be scanned, and that's associated with a particular blockchain address and a transaction hash. Okay, so I will just move to takeaway message and say, reflecting on our findings, and our findings were very much scaled. So we use a mixed approach. We would say that digital technologies can help to advance and deliver energy efficiency education in the construction sector. And of course, we've used a community platform strategy to aggregate knowledge, but also users, and enable a number of tools for users for themselves to promote energy efficiency education, training labeling, and training authentication, all using on this well-known agenda that technologies and digital tools can actually promote a community objective. So that's it. Very pleased to be in the session and provide our results. Feel free to email me in case you have additional questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Johan. And I'm sorry if I had to make you skip some slides. Actually, since you're here, Carlos, our speaker, already has written a couple of questions for you in the slide. And the first is that he asks if the results that you showed can be made available.
Yes, and the answer is that our results are already published in a deliverable that is accessible via the platform. So this is part of the Instruct project. We released those online.
Perfect. And the second question is, in Spain, installers are increasingly requiring multifaceted profiles capable of dealing with case-by-case situations. Does it coincide with your findings?
I think this is a very, very specific, question. But I would say that's correct. We've discovered that this is probably sometimes is a case-by-case situation, and we are not looking into those very specific interventions. But what we're trying to do is, for instance, to installers to be made aware and have access to common strategies on how they can operate in a certain context. The solution that they would apply, of course, that would be very much specific, but I think the objective is to change their state of awareness and, of course, improve their current interventions with the objective to have sustainability in place.
Thank you so much. So I have a question for Carlos that is now going to have to answer instead of asking question. So Carlos, in your presentation, you underlined the bottlenecks to a successful upskilling in the sector of heat pumps. And among these, of course, you mentioned the lack of funds. So how can more funds be allocated in the short term to heat pump reskilling and upskilling needs, and particularly within the mutual recognition agreements? And which role should the European Union play in this?
Yes, I have been referring to in my presentation to some extent. No, it is a message that has been conveyed by all representatives from the whole value chain. Of course, industry is trying to make a huge effort in education and training, albeit not always as coordinated as desirable with other stakeholders, particularly in the public sector. No? And in this respect, there is a clear lack of connection between particularly the European Social Fund instruments and more specific instruments devoted to heat pump upskilling and reskilling. This is a clear evidence that has been transmitted to us by different representatives of these audiences, and I think there is a clear need to streamline the application of these funds onto a widespread education and training system specific for heat pump skills at a European level. Of course, the contents of these education and training schemes can vary from one country to another, but this perception is common in most EU countries. Okay.
Sorry, I had muted myself. I was saying thank you, Carlos. I do actually now have a question for our first speaker, Patrick. So, Patrick, in your presentation for the HP4All project, you underlined all the work that has been done by the partners towards the reskilling and upskilling in the whole heat pump value chain. So, in dealing with the pilot stakeholders, what has been your experience regarding the availability of labor and willingness of those available to upskill?
Thanks, Anya. I think I mean, from in the Irish context, it is certainly a pressure. You know, there are great pressures in the would say the heating and plumbing industry, but there is a willingness because there is you know, there are very generous I would say government grants there for retrofitting heat pumps. So that is creating an income stream for installers and for equipment suppliers. So, and if they want to avail of that, they need to undertake a certain amount of additional training. So there are, in the last couple of years, 2 years or so, there are new nationally accredited training courses that are available as kind of add-on modules, as maybe Thomas referred to earlier. They're not they already have the bulk of the skills that are required, so it's just some additional knowledge. And then there's a lot of would say support being provided then by the equipment suppliers through their dealer networks, where they might employ in-house engineers who are skilled in the design and commissioning systems.
Thank you very much for this very answer. Very well. Sorry. Okay. Thank you so much for your answer. I've got then a question for Peter Juris, who has presented the Train for Sustain project. And I would like to know what is the concrete exploitation plan of the project outcomes. Can you hear me, Peter?
Yes, sorry, the camera is seems to be slow.
No problem.
Well, as for exploitation, we have multiple plans. Thank you for the question. We aim or wish to participate, partner with the project and developments in the services who are assessing basically skills and competences of building professionals. There are many development avenues that we see possible to cooperate. Our framework is, as I told, is flexible, and therefore we also see the potential of basically complement each other's research results in terms of methodology, in terms of IT services. And the other aspect for us is to really, since the SEN pre-standard is something that can be referred already in regulations, if a region or country wish to do so. We are particularly investigating stakeholders that see a potential in the system. Maybe update their GPP process or procurement processes in general.
Thank you very much for your answer. I now have one last question coming from the audience. So George, it is a question for all panelists. So George asks, how do you judge the market potential of heat recovery systems from sewers, municipal wastewater? Is a lack of skilled workers within water utilities a barrier that is holding back wider adoption? So this is an open question. So please, whomever wants to start answering. Here's it, Patrick.
I suppose from our experience with the Austrian partners, where we are looking at developing larger scale projects, I think it would be fair to say that there isn't a straightforward approach to these kind of projects. I think we would be looking at the need to involve specialist equipment suppliers, let's say for example, for heat exchangers to interface between the heat pump system and the wastewater to start with, and then the next step, the heat pump itself would need to be fairly bespoke, so you're looking at a kind of almost an R&D project. So it would be challenging to tender for a project like that in the public realm, because it's quite innovative. So I think that's a big it's a challenge, but as regards the scope of it, there should be huge potential there as an energy source, because the water temperatures are relatively higher than the ambient that they are flowing through. So just that would be my contribution. It's not probably a full answer, but
any other that would like to answer? George, please, Carlos.
Yeah, yes. In the case of Spain, this is clearly an underexploited opportunity. To date, usage of or recycling of wastewater is the predominant approach, and in this sense, heat recovery from waste stream is at a very early stage. I don't think this is a matter of lack of skill, but of other kind of priorities. No, in this sense, at least in Mediterranean countries, wastewater reuse preempts over some other uses.
Thank you so much, Carlos. I don't know if the other speakers, Peter and Jon, want to add something.
Maybe also, if you can hear me, I can speak also on behalf of the Hungarian case. Sewage water, wastewater is also unexploited here in Hungary too. I also believe that it's not a matter of skilled professionals, but the focus, the investment that going into this direction it was not present up until now. Also, more established technology, basically as it counts like towards bioenergy project, this resource, it's also underexploited here in Hungary. So there are multiple opportunities. This also means.
Thank you so much, Peter. I don't know if there are other inputs from the speakers. I do not have any more questions for you. In the chat, there are no more questions. So if okay for you, since we are already behind the schedule, I would like to close this event. I would like to invite you all attendees to please follow the Heat Pump for All project that is on social media. And you can also follow EHPA to learn more about our events. This is it. I would like to finally close the project. Thank you, everyone. A special thank to the speakers for sharing with us their work and allowing us to learn more about the skills, the need of skills in the energy transition. So nothing. Thank you all. And you will find this recording on social media, as I said, and it will be sent to you over the next days. Thank you and bye-bye.